Friends, it is so good to be with you today, and I'm grateful for this invitation to be with you in what continues to be a tender time for so many of us. And I'm grateful for everyone here in this congregation and these two congregations that have come together today, who have supported UUSC over the years and continue to do so as they can. Thank you for all the ways you're living out your Unitarian Universalist values in the world in service of justice. For so many of us, these last few years, and this last year especially, seem to be an endless litany of one crisis after another. Climate forced displacement, assaults on human rights, a deadly global pandemic. And as these events and more transition from acute to chronic, we must remember that going back to business as usual is not an option. Not if we seek to live up to the values we espouse and create a world with more justice, a world in which everyone's needs are met, a world that we often call beloved community. This is a world that's going to be built on love, a liberatory love, the kind of love that allows us to stay in the struggle until everyone is welcome, everyone is whole, and everyone is free. This is what we're being called to now in so many ways. Co-creating a beloved community that looks to partners, not saviors, that looks to justice, not the status quo, a community that reaches towards life, not harmful ideology. Dr. Cornel West reminds us that justice is what love looks like in public. And justice is central to the beloved community we're trying to create. Justice, as it is conceived in much of American society, is often thought of as something separate from us, an impartial system, perhaps, or an objective ideal that somehow resides outside of human bonds. In reality, though, relationship is at the core of justice. Justice is co-created between people and between communities. This means that justice is foundational to forming the beloved community. Author Rachel Naomi Remen describes justice work as being in service of wholeness. I love that phrase, being in service of wholeness. This idea is also found in the words of Australian Indigenous activist Lilla Watson, when she says, "If you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." Activist and author Adrienne Marie Brown speaks to this when discussing emergent strategy, the practice of looking to instances of right relationship in the natural and human world and following their examples. Brown points to mutually supportive, morally grounded, and imaginative community-based solutions as the animating force and redemptive power of justice work today. It is the foundation of beloved community, of life reaching towards life. The Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, or UUSC, where I work, is also a part of this journey. Founded in 1940 in response to the rise of fascism in Europe, UUSC began as a mission by a Unitarian minister and his wife, Waitstill and Martha Sharp, who traveled to Prague in order to do what they could to get as many Jews and political dissidents being targeted by the Nazis to safety. As the years went on, the Unitarian Service Committee, which later became the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, expanded its global work, sending aid to places around the world facing humanitarian crisis. Over time, our human rights work began to focus more on systemic justice issues, shifting to a model of partnership with grassroots organizations led by those most affected by injustice. Today, our work focuses on climate-forced displacement, crisis response, and migrant justice. While these initiatives may seem unrelated at first glance, they are at their core all interconnected. These issues are about the right to security within our homes, the right to restore our homes when they're ravaged by natural or human-made disaster, and the right to seek a new home elsewhere. It is this last right, the human right to migrate, the right to seek asylum, that inspired UUSC to create a program called the Congregational Accompaniment Project for Asylum Seekers, or CAPAS. This collaborative accompaniment program is a profound way to journey with and shelter people who are somewhere within the asylum process. Anti-immigration rhetoric, cruel enforcement policies, and a near complete dismantling of the US asylum process has been escalating in recent years, but this is in no way a new phenomenon. A new federal administration does not automatically mean that things will improve for those attempting to migrate to the United States. For instance, in 1994, the US government began implementing an immigration policy they called prevention through deterrence. This policy relies on increasing restrictions at checkpoints and militarizing populated areas along the US-Mexico border. This forces migrants to attempt travel through the inhospitable and often deadly mountainous desert landscape if they wish to enter the United States. Approximately 9,000 migrants are believed to have perished through the prevention through deterrence policy since it was implemented in the mid-90s. And this is just one tiny sliver of the ways our country makes it nearly impossible to migrate here safely or legally. Those who manage to enter into the asylum process in the United States, a process which often takes years, must navigate a complicated, contradictory, and challenging bureaucracy. People with pending asylum claims must find a way to survive, yet are often prevented from working legally in the United States or collecting any public benefits. This makes survival impossible without community support. The immigration policies of the United States are cowardly, hard-hearted, and small-minded. Within this context of immigration injustice in our country, many people both within and beyond migrant communities have looked for new ways to change this system, to act as neighbors instead of enemies, to affirm a truth that could not be more clear: we are all connected. No matter who you are or what side of an invented border you were born on, we are all connected. As Adela Ramirez said in the video we watched, migrating is an act of love. This is where accompaniment comes in. All over the country, neighbors and friends have created networks to accompany migrants to immigration hearings, legal and medical appointments, and check-ins with ICE, which stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. One of these networks is the UUSC Congregational Accompaniment Program for Asylum Seekers, CAPAS, that I mentioned earlier. Congregational sponsorship means that a group within a faith community makes a commitment together to support a person or a family who have entered the legal process of seeking asylum in the United States. These congregational teams offer emotional care and comfort in times of stress and fear, provide a ride or translation services, or advocacy before a judge. They meet migrants in transition at bus stations with supplies for their journey, and they help them find secure housing. In all forms, accompaniment is an invitation to witness, to listen, and to show up. It is a practice of being human together in the face of extremely dehumanizing systems and circumstances. For those of us who are not directly targeted by ICE, accompaniment brings us closer to the violence our immigration and criminal punishment systems, creating opportunities to build relationships with those who are most impacted. As a result, many people who engage in accompaniment become deeply transformed and grow more committed to disrupting these harmful systems or enacting in ways that create a more liberated future for all of us. A liberated future that we could call beloved community. Beloved community is joy-filled, imperfect, challenging, and flexible. It is life reaching towards life. Before we can build the beloved community, we have to be able to imagine it. We have to move from a place of reaction to creation. Another gem of wisdom that Adrienne Marie Brown offers is that if we are not also organized towards what we really want and long for, we will always settle for just reacting and trying to stop something bad from happening. I can certainly resonate with that feeling of always needing to react against something bad, while at the same time understanding on a cellular level how frustrating and demoralizing that can be. Maybe you've experienced this as well. If we want to do our justice work more effectively and faithfully, we have to have a vision of the world we want, not just the world we don't want. So this is what I'm going to invite us to do now. To start imagining what the beloved community actually looks and feels like, to practice being there in our entirety. This will be a brief visioning practice, and if you've ever done guided meditation, this will be familiar. So I ask that you settle your body into a comfortable position. Maybe that means grounding your feet on the floor like the roots of a great tree. Maybe that means relaxing your head and letting your chin dip down a bit so your head is closer to your heart. Maybe that means leaning your head back as if your head really is up in the clouds. Maybe it means something different for you. And whatever it is, that is just all right. And if you're comfortable doing so, close your eyes or soften your gaze. Take a deep breath in, and as you release that breath, notice your muscles. Are they clenched from worry? Take another deep breath in, and as you release that breath, try to soften those muscles. Keep breathing. And as we breathe, I'm going to play us a short bit of music to help us ease into this space. Now in this more relaxed state, imagine that we've made it. We are home. We are in the beloved community where there is no war and no poverty, no borders and no prisons. Bring yourself into that future time when we have arrived and where we are together in beloved community. Notice all of your senses that are being activated. Those might be different for each of us. What do you see? What do you hear? Can you smell something? Or maybe taste something? What can you feel? Who is there with you? What are we doing together? Take another deep breath in as you continue to notice, and slowly breathe that out. And as we slowly come back to the present moment, take a minute to notice how your time in the beloved community made you feel. Did something stick with you particularly? A sound or an image or a scent? If you feel comfortable doing so, let us know in the chat what you experienced so that we can start to share our visions together as a community. Peace and compassion, a deep sense of peace and a sense of safety. How beautiful. I smelled baking bread and heard children laughing, smile and hugs, yes. Children of all colors frolicking outdoors in lush green worlds, smiles and bird song. Was sitting with young people. We were drawing and talking and listening with one another without structure and without a timeline. Holding each other up. Yes, yes. As these keep coming, I hope we'll continue to share together. So my colleagues, Angela Kelly and Heather Vickery, taught me this practice. And it has had a profound impact, both on my ability to stay in this work for the long haul, and also how I do the work right now. I'm sure you know as well as I do that it's a lot easier being the person you want to be in this world when you are filled with peace and possibility rather than frustration and fear. When I imagine the beloved community, what I experience is a community garden. It's towards the end of summer when the squash and peppers are blushing with their final colors and are almost ready to eat. And the air has that good, rich scent of earth that has been baking in the sun after a drenching morning rainstorm. Neighbors talk or hum as we busy ourselves with weeding and pruning. And already we're talking about making a bigger garden next year with even more raised beds, high enough for someone in a chair or a wheelchair to tend the plants from a seated position. And as I brought back to that place, I know the food we are growing tastes like the joy of knowing that no one is hungry, that the laughter I hear sounds like true liberation, a type of laughter that can only be heard when no one is behind bars, and that the people I'm with feel like home because I know everyone in the world has shelter. Just talking about with you now and reading about the visions you have fills me with a sense of well-being. I miss that world, even though I've never physically been there. When I'm struggling with all the injustices in the world and feeling overwhelmed and like I have to respond to all of them, or feeling like nothing I do can ever make a real difference, I go back to that place. I let it wash over me and I ask myself, what will get us closer to that world? How am I different when I'm in that place? And how can I start living that way here and now? What is my work to do? And what is the work that combines my passions and my skills and brings us closer to the beloved community? So now I ask, how will you get to your vision of the beloved community? This is a question to ask yourself as an individual, but also to ask yourselves as congregations. What is your collective vision for the beloved community? Michael Servetus Unitarian Society and UU Fellowship of Mankato. What does your mosaic of dreams look like? And how will you together get to that vision of beloved community? And then what will you do to make that vision even larger? Does your vision of beloved community include accompanying someone on the journey to asylum? To expand a vision of radical welcome, to materially and substantially include someone you've never met before, perhaps someone with whom you do not share a common language, someone who has no choice but to rely on the compassion of strangers? Accompanying someone through the asylum process has the power to transform what beloved community means to everyone involved. How will you get to your vision of beloved community? We are linked together in this work, friends, both because of our shared Unitarian Universalist values, but also by your consideration to join the Kappas Project, to offer shelter and material aid to our neighbors seeking asylum. Being in solidarity with and sharing resources with someone seeking asylum is a tangible way to say yes to justice, yes to community, yes to that which affirms life. This is one of the countless ways we become the beloved community, even as we seek to create it. We each have a role to play in its creation, each of us bringing our broken, growing selves in service of wholeness, recognizing that your liberation is bound up with mine, and that no one is free until everyone is free. So now we're going to spend some time talking about that. How will you get to your vision of beloved community? Let's open it up for some conversation.
Laura, as you were speaking, I just wanted to come clean with the congregation that Dottie has actually contacted me to speak with Michael Servetus Unitarian Society, because there is a possibility that a father who is going to be reconnecting with a child who's been in the United States who may be in our area. So when I think about a way, it may be the willingness to discern and say yes, even when it may be really unknown as to what loving in that way may look like.
Thank you.
I'm Marie Phillips, and I'm thinking about if we were to help this man and his child financially and in other ways. I think a way to help us come together as a community, it's something we had talked about, I know, a few weeks ago, about covenant groups. And that may be a way to get us more connected with each other and connected in this, on this path to helping others as well as ourselves.
Thank you. I see in the chat too, says Roger and Jamie, I might like to do this. I'm a bilingual social worker. And this is exactly what I mean with the skills and talents and pull that we have. We'll be feeling it in different ways, but with a community, there's a lot there. Nancy and Dennis ask, how do we find out if there's someone seeking asylum in our area in Mankato? My question, or I think I would refer you, Dennis and Nancy, to reach out to Dottie Matthews, who's here on the call, and I'm sure can offer her contact information to be part of that conversation. That's wonderful. John Price says, I will continue to spread the feeling of beloved community through the mystery of music and genuine conversations. Thank you, John. Thank you for that. Diane says, historically, it makes me think of how folks who are escaping from slavery and the Unitarians and Universalists helped in their time. Yeah. And Dottie has put her email there. Thank you, Dottie.
I see Katie's hand. Katie, go ahead.
My initial reaction, unfortunately, is one of fear that I know I have to overcome. And there's two things. The layer of COVID has definitely impacted my own sense of being able to be generous, and that has been a challenge for me. And it also just feels like one more thing to do on an already long to-do list. So it feels like a valuable thing to be asked and to respond to, and yet it also feels pretty scary and hard to do.
Thank you so much for that, Katie. Yeah, absolutely. And this is why this is the first step in the discernment process that we hope that you'll undertake with Dottie's guidance to answer your questions, because this is a relationship that needs to be considered and cared for. And talking through concerns and fears is absolutely a part of this discernment process. So thank you for that. Thank you for that comment, Elizabeth, of regarding the unknown references by Rev Laura. We've just lived through a year of unknowns and uncertainty, and the thought of stepping forward now with this unknown is actually invigorating. We have gotten a lot of practice at that lately. Probably getting pretty good at it. Did I see Ted waving his hand?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
My question is what can we do to support the in-country assistance like we used to decades ago? It's very good that we're focusing on here at people trying to get asylum. What can we do to present the conditions? What can we do to minimize the conditions that are taking place in country? And what programs are being offered through UUSC?
Thank you for that, Ted. That's a great question too. So that's a part of the work that we do at UUSC is we have partnerships with grassroots organizations in Central America, in Guatemala, in Honduras, in El Salvador, and Nicaragua right now, as well as in Mexico, right along the US-Mexico border with several of the camps there that people are forced to wait in, essentially. So supporting UUSC is certainly one way to help with those efforts as we continue to build those relationships and learn about what's needed there. Each of our partners is doing something slightly different. For instance, in Nicaragua, we're working with a feminist farming collective who've been doing amazing work over the years. In Honduras, we're working with water defenders and defending them in court, not legally, but with representation and letting them know that the world is watching, essentially, as many environmental activists there are the victims of state violence and even murder. We also support a progressive radio station called Radio Progreso in Honduras as well. That's getting out information. As well as during COVID, we had a lot of information going over Radio Progreso about keeping yourself safe and also translating those resources into Indigenous languages as well as Spanish. So that's just a few examples of the work that we're doing there, and be happy to talk more about that sometime if you'd like, and connect you with our partners who are doing the work on the ground.
Thank you.
I see now that we need to move on, and this is a great conversation. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate you all engaging in this visioning experience today and for engaging in the discernment process to see if participation in campus and supporting this family is the right move for your congregation and a way that you can be in service of wholeness at this time. And at UUSC, we're also very excited to see how we can practice living together in the world we long for right now. So thank you all for that. Our next hymn is Circle Round for Freedom, and this arrangement was created by Dr.